My name is Rich Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon. You're listening to WVOX, a Whitney Global Media Station, and we're here every Wednesday from 12 noon to 1 p.m. asking the question, what happened here with a particular situation? And this week, we're going to unpack some national issues and some local issues, but also some statewide issues as we move forward with some very special input from our co-host and guest, Charles Knapp. Charles Knapp is the former Assistant United States Attorney for the Eastern District, a former Manhattan District Attorney, Assistant District Attorney in Manhattan. He also serves as Inspector General of Mount Vernon, and we'll be taking questions on a variety of things, ranging from the migrant crisis hit in Westchester County to the situation with Biden and the debt standoff with the Republicans and also some election issues where New York State election law has, created an environment where it's difficult for people that challenge the status quo to, get on the ballot, me being one of them. But nonetheless, we're going to unpack these issues. We're going to talk through them. The phone lines are open at 914-636-0110. Again, that's 914-636-0110. Now, as you know, there's been a lot to do, a lot going on, especially in various municipalities. There were elections yesterday for school board and elections for the library. The results for the school board in Mount Vernon are still not out, but it's clear that voters did support the situation where they supported the budget, and we are eager to see what's going on in Mount Vernon. I know we know that there's a lot of dollars poured into the school system. However, the results seem to be wanting, and that's a very nice way to put it. So we are eagerly awaiting for the new leadership to come in to kind of explain to everybody what they're going to do and how they're going to make sure that our kids get educated. More, we're also eagerly looking at what is happening at the Mount Vernon Library in its entirety. We know that there's been a lot of questions, a lot of concerns raised, and so as the situation evolves there, we're going to find out who won those races. Hopefully, we'll be able to find out today because at the end of the day, we definitely need a board that's going to deliver and create value for the community. But I do want to tap in very briefly and talk about the debt standoff at the national level. Finally, some good signals, some good news is coming in from Washington that both sides indicate that a deal will be made and there will be no default on America's obligations, which is a good thing because if there were to be a shutdown or a default of any kind, millions of people, up to 41 million people that rely on federal assistance for food would be subject to starvation. And that's it's just not right. So to know that we have a signal from Washington indicating that they agree that there will be no default at least gives people some pause and some ease that systems that they rely upon, like SNAP and WIC, to help people make ends meet is a great signal and a sign of relief. But more relief needs to be provided. More relief needs to be addressed. I know that as interest rates went up, something that we all uh, are thinking about because we have inflation eating away at everything. Um, there seems to be more pressure put on consumers, and again, there seems to be no path in place to help ordinary people, help middle class families make it through. And when I think about, what is that pathway to the American dream that everybody aspires to have a slice of, you get, very concerned because you see disruptive technologies like artificial intelligence taking on some work that could be done by humans, and then you also see empty storefronts in your downtowns. And when, I go to Bronxville, for example, to either go to the Starbucks or go to grab a cocktail, their downtown is is busy. It's jumping, and it's so busy that they had to install a new traffic management system to handle the traffic. And that's a good thing for Bronxville's downtown, very much like Portchester. But when I compare those areas and how they have grown, because they've done the right things from safety to investing in their capital, making sure that you don't have the problems of, for example, raw sewage ruining businesses or homeowners' basements. They're able to build up their local businesses so they have a thriving downtown. Now, many remember Mount Vernon's Gramerton Avenue and Fourth Avenue being the destination to get your latest fashion trends, your latest and best assortment of foods, be it fresh meat or cheese or other items that you need for your household. But today, the answer is no, you will not go to Gramerton Avenue only for a small few collection of stores that are scattered about. And there's no vision or no plan to populate or fill those storefronts whatsoever. And when you go down Gramerton today, it's virtually a ghost town. And that's one of the things that, is truly concerning because, when you have the ability to leverage lots of resources for a variety of purposes, especially infrastructure, and there's still no plan for Mount Vernon's downtown, you wonder what has been going on, and you can get the answer right away. Nothing. And that's where, I get really concerned. And I'm going to keep coming back to that because when you look at the vision of Mount Vernon today, there isn't one. And that's where and why when you have elections, you're supposed to have a choice. But right now in Mount Vernon, there are no choices when it comes to the ballot because the incumbent, backed by some very deep pocket interest groups, are blocking access to the ballot. And our guest, Charles Knapp, can unpack a little bit what this means because when you look at how to get on the ballot in New York, it's very difficult. It's not only complicated, but it's designed to deny independent, free-thinking people from getting on. And Charlie, do you want to give a context for people that are listening about the process to get on the ballot and how you can get taken off a ballot in New York?
Sure. But first, as far as a choice is concerned, I always think back of Henry Ford and his Model T when it first came on the market. And the publicity was you can get the Model T in any color you want, so long as it's black. And in Westchester, it's been shown time and time again that the only person who gets the Democratic nomination is the one that the Westchester County Democratic Party rulers want to get the nomination. Uh, they learned their lesson from 2015 when there were too many people in the primary, and you were the dark horse, the only reformer, and the only one not under the thumb of the Westchester County Democrats. You won the primary because they split the vote. And then, of course, they had to take care of business. And so they went after you every which way they could. Uh, Oddly enough, people who had committed much more significant missteps than you, there was either a fine, like Mayor Adams recently in New York, or Mayor de Blasio, who avoided everything thanks to Cy Vance not wanting to take a risk in a prosecution of de Blasio. But in terms of New York's election laws, they're famously convoluted, they're famously confusing, and that's all, it seems to me, by design. Every attempt to simplify it, make it more straightforward, give the power back to the people, somehow gets stymied up in Albany. And I know that a couple of years ago, you tried to lead a reform of New York State election laws. And of course, not surprisingly, that went nowhere because it's all about control. So if New York were in the South, New York State would have been on the famous list that existed for pre-clearance, alongside such stellar voting rights states as Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia at the time, North Carolina, Florida, you name it. Our laws in New York are as Byzantine, as complicated, and that allows for the gamesmanship that you've just been subjected to again. You have people who review signatures to compare, and one group decides, yeah, it's fine, it looks okay. Another group says, no, no, it's not an exact match, so I deem the signature invalid. And, apparently it's only when it's deemed invalid that it gets tossed, and you just ignore an earlier panel that said it was valid. And then you wind up in front of a judge, so that takes money and time away from the campaign. And then you have a judge who says, sure, you're a tiny little campaign, you're working hand to mouth. So here's the deal. I don't care that the Board of Elections didn't give you the proper notice. You come up with 270 signed affidavits tomorrow and you're fine. And that's more than insulting. It's impossible and it's a game. And the system has to be returned to the people. And it's not going to work unless people are elected who will support reform.
And that's where we're going to pick up when we come back from this quick commercial break. Don't change that dial. So everybody that's watching online, I'm gonna restart the live, and I want you guys to sign back in. All right, to sign back in, and just want to make sure that you all share this and sign back in. I'm gonna restart the live. All right. What I don't want to happen is
accumulated and purged, and the waste
what
generated from everyday
what
living.
happens sometimes
To
on
rely on
Instagram.
your
It
trash
shuts
removal
down my
service to get
feed
the job done.
Oh,
To
without
deserve
notice,
honesty, you
and
expect
I want to make sure
reliability.
that
You need CRP
we
sanitation.
capture
Since
each
1979,
segment so
CRP
that
sanitation has
we
been
get
the
it
trash
going.
removal
That's
company
all. We capture.
homeowners, business owners, and contractors have depended on for honest, reliable service. No dispatchers in different locations who don't know you. No answering services. CRP employees answer the phones, and they know their customers by name. Communication is a key to their success. Communication with you. Other companies offer the world and never deliver. CRP Sanitation offers exactly what you get: honesty, dependability, professionalism. Doing some remodeling? CRP Sanitation can estimate the weight and needs of a dumpster, and that means not paying more than you need or having to add additional services at additional costs. Not all trash companies are created equal. Family owned. CRP Sanitation, Westchester's finest in sanitation. Call 592-4129. 592-4129.
Ever wondered what work is like in the radio industry?
Do you want to learn how to produce a radio show?
If so, apply to the WVOX internship program to learn alongside professionals. Give Don Stevens a call at 914-636-1460.
Or email at dawn@wvox.com.
We will see you soon.
This is WVOX at 1460 for Eastchester, Pelham, and West Harrison.
1460 WVOX. And now back to What Happened Here with Rich Thomas, the former mayor of Mount Vernon, on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. My name is Rich Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon. You're listening to What Happened Here on 1460 on your AM dial or worldwide on WVOX.com. Now, we're here every Wednesday from 12 noon to 1 p.m. asking the question, what happened here with a particular situation? And this week, unpacking elections oppression in New York State. We're talking a little bit about the migrant crisis hitting Westchester County, some Biden versus Trump dynamics, especially with respect to the debt standoff. And, look, we're going to be taking questions. So if you want to call in and ask any question about some topics, the phone number is 914-636-0110. And that's 914-636-0110. And our special guest and co-host for today is Charles Knapp. He is the former Assistant United States Attorney for the Eastern District. He is also a former assistant Manhattan district attorney, along with serving as the former inspector general in the city of Mount Vernon, which, by the way, the role remains empty to this day. But goes to show you the lack of commitment by folks in City Hall to having an inspector general do the work that needs to be done to ensure that there are strong processes and procedures. But nonetheless, we were talking about before we went to break New York State's election laws and how they create a circumstance that blocks people from A, accessing the ballot, and B, it suppresses the vote by denying voters a true choice. And that's something that, in New York, you would like to believe that this is a place where the ideals of democracy are upheld, but it's actually quite the opposite. And before we went to break, Charles Knapp was explaining the process as to, what happens when after you go through a process to get on the ballot. In layman's terms, you get drug into court, and if you cannot pay a good attorney and you cannot defend yourself, you have very limited options because court is very expensive, but it's also very complicated, especially if you're not a lawyer. So I just want to emphasize everybody that's watching. If you have any questions about how elections work, if you have any thoughts about, you know, fairness in this process, or if you think that there should be reforms, definitely let us know. Feel free to call in at 914-636-0110. And as Charlie mentioned before, some years ago, I participated in a um, a commission that New York State founded to bring about elections reform. And I made some recommendations about campaign finance, and I believe those were added recently. And starting next year, there will be campaign finance reform put in place so that very similar to New York City, where if a candidate runs for office, there will be matching funds available from New York State now to help those other candidates that do not have the financial backing of, some deep-pocketed people to compete, and that could be a good thing. But I do know that when it comes to some of the tricks that were implemented in 2019, for example, if your voting address was changed and you went to your polling location that where you usually voted for the past, let's say dozen or more years, and you showed up there and they said, "Oh, you don't vote here no more." In 2019, the Board of Elections did not have to tell you where to go and vote. They also did not have to allow you to vote at all at that location because it was the wrong location, according to the dubious trick of changing your address without your consent. So that happened to close to 1,000 people in Mount Vernon in 2019. And some people, spent 5 hours searching for their polling location, only to be told, go the other way. But now a law was changed to advance. If you live if you live in a certain assembly district, you can vote wherever you want to within that assembly line district. So the assembly member for Mount Vernon is Gary Pretlow, and he covers Mount Vernon and parts of Yonkers. So when you look at his district, if you're, let's just say, over by Cross County, the shopping mall, and it's getting close to 9 o'clock, and like, oops, I haven't voted yet. You can vote if you live in Mount Vernon. You technically can vote over by Cross County Shopping Mall, so long as it is within the assembly district of your assembly member Gary Pretlow. And I share that to point out that the Board of Elections can no longer deny someone their right to vote, no matter what polling location, so long as it is within their voting assembly district. And that's a big, big, big benefit because now the trick of changing your address is somewhat out the window. But at the very least, you now have the option to go vote in other locations, and they must provide you with a ballot. And that's one of the key things that people, were very concerned about going forward. And I'm happy to report that that has at least been put in place.
Right, but in the meantime, to get on the ballot, New York State still makes it a minefield for a candidate and allows for a lot of gamesmanship by the parties. But since Westchester is mostly, Mount Vernon is controlled by the Democratic Party, for the Democrats to make it very difficult, if not impossible, for people that they disapprove of. And I'm sitting across from one of the main people they disapprove of from getting on the ballot. And the laws should be that it's up to the people. So if Richard Thomas is on the ballot and Andre Wallace is on the ballot and the current mayor is on the ballot, let the people decide who they want. Don't cut into their decision making. The option is a write-in. And in effect, what the Democratic Party has said to the good people of Mount Vernon is, we're not going to give you a fair choice. You're going to have to do something extra, meaning write in a name to get the person that you may want that we've rejected on your behalf. So it's up to the people once again.
Well, don't change that dial. You're listening to What Happened Here, and we're going to keep asking the question, what happened here with New York State election matters? And we're going to talk about national issues when we get back from break. Don't change that dial.
These elections.
How y'all doing out there? I know the first wave. Good to see you guys. Okay, all right.
Here's the latest update from AP News on 1460 WVOX.
I'm Ed Donahue with an AP News Minute. As talks continue to raise the nation's debt limit, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has a message for President Biden.
Mr. President, stop hiding. Stop traveling somewhere else. America wants an American president focused on American problems, finding American solutions.
The president is headed to the G7 summit
I
in
think that
Japan.
was,
He's confident there will not be a
the
default.
Infrastructure Act. That seemed pretty
to
good.
hammer out
Yeah,
all
I
the
know, right?
differences.
They weren't
They
complaining
haven't
about
done
that.
In fact, they met last night. They're going to
Well,
be meeting
as
again today.
Biden said in
And,
the State of the Union
I'll be
address,
in
he said,
constant contact
guys
with
who
my
voted
team while I'm
against
at
it
the
are there
G7.
Prince
taking
Harry says
victory
he and his
laps
wife
on something
Meghan
as
were
important as
pursued in their
this.
car by photographers in New York. Eric Adams is the mayor of New York.
If it's 10 minutes, a 10-minute chase is extremely dangerous in New York City.
It instantly drew comparisons to the 1997 fatal crash involving Harry's mother, Princess Diana, in Paris. I'm Ed Donahue.
Okay, that was out of left field. Yeah.
Paid for by Christian Care Ministry.
Let's see, if something costs less,
Voice
people are happier
should
with
have
it.
been that of
That sounds like something to look into,
but
and
the
that's
fact that
MediShare.
the
You've heard switching
progressives
to
always
MediShare
like
to
to
pay for
shoot
healthcare can
themselves
save
in
the
Yeah,
the
typical
foot.
family
literally. I mean, like,
$500 a month. And that's
and that
huge, but
lady
it's
just
also
got
true
away
that
with the
people are way
accusation,
more
and she's
satisfied
just,
after making the switch, too.
She did
The
her
customer
job. She's moving
satisfaction
on,
rate for
and I'm sure
MediShare
she
is
got that
double that
across
of the
because no
typical
one's
health
heard
insurance
of her
plan.
and her company
MediShare
already.
works. It's been
yep.
around for more than a quarter century, and members have shared more than
It's a
$3
real tragedy.
billion of each other's
Yeah, but
bills. People love having telehealth and a huge
when
nationwide
everything
PPO
becomes
network. So,
identity politics,
yeah, you
and
could save a ton and like it better.
now's the time for
Imagine
a
being happy
progressive
with how you're
black
taking
woman
care of your
to
health
be
care.
mayor.
So if you're
We
Yeah.
end up
self-employed or
with
part of the
a
gig economy, or you
guy
just want
like
a plan you're
Adams.
happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. Very,
So
very smart
that's
use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need.
perfect being the enemy of the good.
855-51-BIBLE. That's
Yep.
855-51-BIBLE.
Literally.
855-51-BIBLE.
And now with your latest up-to-date forecast, here's Steve Pellettieri's Eye on Weather on 1460 WVOX.
Updated weather forecast for Westchester on your Wednesday afternoon. Plenty of sunshine, fair weather clouds, and a brisk northwest wind. Our high temperatures only in the middle 60s. Tonight, mostly clear. Nighttime low temperatures down to 39. Some of the cooler spots north and west to about 44. And daytime Thursday, look for a sunny day. Our highs will range back into the mid 60s. At night, mostly clear. Not school, only down to about the mid to upper 40s. Friday features sunshine, highs 65 to 70. Saturday is a possibility of some showers, but looks like on the light side. High temperatures near 70. Sunday back to mostly sunny weather, mid 70s. I'm meteorologist Steve Pelletieri for 1460 WVOX, a Whitney Global Media Station.
Westchester's Soapbox, whenever you damn well feel like it. Get on the air and have your say. 1460 WVOX.
And now back to What Happened Here with Rich Thomas, the former mayor of Mount Vernon, 1460 WVOX.
Go. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. My name is Rich Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon. You're listening to 1460 on your AM dial worldwide at WVOX.com. And, you're listening to What Happened Here, where every week from Wednesday from 12 noon to 1 p.m., we ask a question, what happened with a particular situation? And today, our special guest and co-host is Charles Knapp, former Assistant United States Attorney for the Eastern District, former Assistant Manhattan District Attorney. He is also a former Inspector General in the city of Mount Vernon. And we were discussing in the prior two segments New York State election laws and how the system is designed to block independent-minded people from gaining access to the ballot and being an actual choice for people to make. And it's not a democracy, it's a hypocrisy because you have a group that says they believe in um, a woman's right to choose, but they don't believe in a voter's right to choose. And you can see it in the actions around voting laws in New York and how they've been designed to stop and deny people from being a part of an actual process where people can choose. And you saw just yesterday, a New York City councilwoman, she withdrew from her race because of the pressure she's getting from a variety of corners. Councilmember Richards is her name. Her last name is Richards, and she's basically saying like there's all sorts of things happening around her that is forcing her to say she's not going through with it. And I feel bad that she reached that point where she's just saying, she gives up. But there are thousands of people that voted for her years ago that want to see her, continue to go forward. And that's something again, you don't often see, but it's very real and present when you have the systemic pressure applied to stop, um, your approach, be it disagreeing with the status quo or something that you want to do that's new that again disrupts the status quo, you get that pushback. But Charlie, as you were explaining, you said that New York State's design or its laws would be the equivalent of voting suppressing states like Mississippi and Florida. What makes you say that?
Well, it's true. Yeah, you just have to look to see what's going on. And it shouldn't be so difficult for qualified candidates to get on the ballot and stay on the ballot. It shouldn't be difficult for people to register to vote and vote where they are told they should be voting until they get there and they're told they're not. And we'll see how the amendments operate on the ground. But the incentive is the people who have the power uh, maintain the power. And there are all sorts of patronage networks and money flowing left, right, and center, and influence flowing left, right, and center, and exchanges of favors and all the rest that, part of that's politics. We understand that. Part of that's human nature. But when it comes to who gets to sit in the seat, that's up to the people, and they should not have a diminished group of choices because it's got to pass muster with the people who are sitting in those seats or who may, to put it more bluntly, control who sits in those seats. And that's really where there's a commonality. There's no transparency. The state board of elections, does what it does when it feels like doing something. Some people get a pass. Some people they get the proverbial ton of bricks falls down on them. Others get prosecuted. Others don't get prosecuted. And there's no one standard. It is a bit too much of a double standard, frankly. And so to that extent, New York has all the faults of, what we imagine the vote suppressing southern states are. It's not a matter of race, it's a matter of power.
And I just want to amplify some of those points and what's at stake. And what's at stake is safety. Let's start there. Safety, and we've seen 4 teenagers in Mount Vernon die due to violence in the city. We've seen others recently get injured due to more violence in the city, and that stems from the police department being dismantled. And that's a decision that was made by the current administration over the years to dismantle the police department to such an extent that safety is really compromised throughout the entire city. Um, what is at stake when you don't have choice is taxes. And you think about your cost of living today. You think of your electric bill. You think of your rent or your grocery bill. You see that the monies that you put into the system, particularly Mount Vernon, you see that those bills have gone up and services have gone down. And that's where again you see the consequence of having no choice. And you see it again as I opened up the show. I talked about the downtown. You see downtown Gramerton Avenue, Fourth Avenue. It's not what you remember it to be. It is a ghost town, and that is not the Mount Vernon that I know, that I remember or love. This is a version of Mount Vernon that's like in Back to the Future in Part Two, where Biff becomes president or something to that effect, right? And it's like he goes to 1985 and realizes that everything is just wrong. And that's sort of what we have going on, particularly in Mount Vernon. And when you look at Port Chester or Bronxville or other communities that have evolved and developed, and Mount Vernon remains trapped in a donut hole because there are forces out there that want to see Mount Vernon stay where it is. Why? It's not clear to me, but what is clear is that there are people in Mount Vernon that want better, and those people deserve to have a choice. And the only way we're going to get a choice is by having some real reforms and some real pressure put on those in various levels of government to respect the people. And I think that's going to be a process that will play out. But right now, we know that there are some dynamics that are pushing back. But I feel that the people are going to push back. That's where I believe.
It's up to the people. Ultimately, you get the government that you deserve because if you don't care enough to vote, uh, or vote for the person you would really like as opposed to the candidates that are given to you, it's on you. And, a lot of it's political gamesmanship. Some of it is really obvious, and sometimes it just comes down to a politician. You wonder how stupid do they think I am to fall for what they're doing? So you have a situation where current mayor is stiffed the Mount Vernon Police Department union trying to get reasonable wages and some back pay for its members who are the most underpaid major city police department in the state. It's well known. She went on record as having claimed to have offered things that she didn't. So look for her now with the primary to shore up, her support by offering the police something all of a sudden out of the blue. That's a political decision aimed at trying to swing some people over to her side who she hopes have very short or no memories at all. Uh, and again, it's up to the people of Mount Vernon. If that's the type of person who they want to lead Mount Vernon, well, then okay, then you vote for her. If you want someone who can reform the system, or at least try to reform the system, who will be transparent and accountable. That person at the moment is not on the ballot. You don't have a choice to vote for that person unless you write in the name. And so it's really up to the people of Mount Vernon to decide what type of future they want. If they want that future decided by others, okay. But if I'm a Mount Vernon voter, I want to have a say. And I want a better future for my kids in Mount Vernon. I want reasonable access to programs that every other city provides. I want a good school system. I don't want potholes on the street. I want a safe city. And I want to know where the money's going, frankly.
And those are questions that every, taxpayer, renter, everybody in the community is asking. Where is it? What's happening? And the truth is, this is where I believe people are that are watching this are, asking the question, what can they do? And that answer will come in a different discussion. But what I can say is, as we unpack the issues and unpack the situation, so everybody understands what happened here, I think it's appropriate for everybody to understand that it's more than just collecting signatures to get on a ballot. It's a whole system that is designed to protect the interests of the people in charge of it. But I know the people are out there, and I know the people are ready to rise up. But we'll talk more about that when we come back from break because there's some topics that we need to get to, like the migrant crisis, how that's going to force some actions that are going to happen. But we'll talk about it when we come back from break.
Since we got on the air, the market's up almost 1%. Sure, it's just a coincidence.
No, they hear us. They hear us. We're talking, bringing confidence to the air.
Frankly.
COX.
There are quite a number of neighborhood flower shops around Westchester County these days. As in all things, some are better than others. And in the Colonial Village Shopping Center on Weaver Street in Scarsdale, to the north of New
About
Rochelle, there
Meghan and
exists a
Harry
florist
were
of
being
very great style and
chased or
renown.
something.
Yeah,
Colonial
there was
Village
some
Flowers
kind of
specializes in
a
beautiful seasonal
chase
flowers
in New York.
arranged
Yeah,
in
how's
good
that
taste,
work?
with the lovely
I guess it
low-key
was just
result
driving
that
around the
all
city
Colonial
or
Village
driving around
presentations,
Yeah,
somewhere,
bouquets, and
right.
arrangements
So
look like they were actually
and
why
then
do you
being
flowers
start
followed.
beautifully
selling?
gathered
Yeah,
in the natural
it's
setting of your own
paparazzi.
garden.
Yeah,
Good
Let them
taste in
take the
flowers
picture.
has for
Don't
years
put
been a
people at
special
risk by
trademark
hitting
of
the
Joe Ward and his
accelerator.
talented
yeah,
floral arrangers
yeah.
at Colonial Village,
Or
featuring the
go to
natural look
the police
without
department
pomp or
and
ceremony.
just
So
ask the police to
please
come
know that
outside
there
and
is at
say,
least
hey,
one
this
flower
is
shop on your classy
happening. Can you
wavelength.
please tell these
Joe
people to
Ward's
stop,
Colonial Village
following
Flowers at
us?
1515 Weaver
Yeah,
Street
that's
in
it.
Scarsdale. Call
I mean, it's
723-2888.
not obvious
That's
that you're trying to
723
outrace
a
people.
2 and 3 eighths.
I
Manhattan
mean,
Beer
it's not a
Distributors
road
is
rage
Westchester
thing.
County's leading
Right.
beverage distributor,
They're
serving all
shooting
types of
you with
businesses like
cameras,
bars,
not
restaurants, bars,
gun
grocery stores, and
Pellets or
supermarkets
something
in
to
New
that
York City,
effect.
Long Island, and upstate New York with the highest
unless,
quality
of
beverage
course, it's
products for over 30
MI6
years.
trying to
Manhattan Beer Distributors offers a full line of alcoholic malt
Shooting
beverage products
tacks at
like
your
Coors
wheel.
Light, the area's #1 light beer and the official beer sponsor of the National Football League and the New York
Fox
City
just went
ING
over.
Manhattan. Manhattan Beer Distributors
It
also
went
offers the
backwards.
Oh
country's
yeah,
#1
yeah.
imported beer, Corona
One can always
Extra
hope.
from Mexico, and a long line of quality imported beers from all over the world. In
See,
addition,
look,
Manhattan Beer Distributors offers the
see
best
how live video
high-quality
stopped?
specialty
Yep.
beers like Blue Moon, Saranac,
Told you.
tea and ales, and so much
Well,
more.
as long as you don't
Manhattan Beer
get
Distributors
paranoid
also
over it.
offers
Yeah,
the
no,
best
no,
in
no. That's why
non-alcoholic
I'm just
brands like
telling you,
San
like it's
Pellegrino, Aquapana, and Perrier waters. And don't forget the best iced tea around, New Leaf Teas. To see their full product line, go to www.manhattanbeer.com. For more information on how Manhattan Beer Distributors can best serve
then
your
you
business, please
lose
contact them at
all of that. And
1-800-BEER
that's
Inc.
why I'm
That's
glad I got it on
1-800-233
Facebook. But it's just like
7462.
Hi, this is Dr. Ronald Hoffman, your trusted partner in
ridiculous.
health and wellness for over 30 years. Catch my show, Intelligent Medicine, on WVOX every Saturday at 4 p.m. and Sunday at 5 a.m. for cutting-edge health information. So check
Talk
out
about migrants for
drhoffman.com
the
for
Yeah.
updated vital health
But
news
it's
throughout the
yeah,
week,
migrants
as well as
and
for
how,
access to the highest quality
my question
supplements and
is how
different
what's
mental
going on
health
in
news on the
Venezuela?
patient.
What's going
That's
on in
Intelligent
Central
Medicine with
America
me,
that,
Dr. Ronald Hoffman, weekends
if
on
we're spending $1 billion
WVOX,
for a fraction
anytime at
of the people that are
drhoffman.com.
there that are experiencing difficulty, how come our foreign direct aid is not being
Ever wonder about
utilized
the people who run the
to
board at
keep
WVOX?
What is working
and
behind
build
the
them up so they
microphone look
don't
like?
come in such huge
You want
numbers?
because
answers,
it
then
doesn't
you'll
get
want
to
to
them.
hear about the
Yeah,
day in the
there you
life
go.
of an intern. Join us for Interns on the
There
Air
you go.
Fridays
So
at
there has
2
to be
p.m.
something
Some
there.
Our
of the
job
best
is to just
conversations
shovel
you'll
money
ever
and,
hear.
Plus,
not
stand up for
interfere
Israel
with the
with them into their
sovereignty of
own
another
personal
nation.
lives.
Yeah, tell me
Tune in
about
to
it.
So the
1460
fact that
AM
most of them want to take
WVOX
it
on Friday at 2
Switzerland or
p.m. Talk to
Cayman
you later.
Islands, that's not our problem. We
Start
did
your
our
day
best.
with
We
Dennis
did our best.
DiOnardo
I mean,
and Miss Tawny.
the thing is
The
a
cast
joke,
of
but
characters. It's Good Morning Westchester.
But
Tweet till we got
it's
to the
gonna
morning.
change the
Weekday
political
mornings from
calculus
6 to
in
9, right here
this
on
region.
1460
one hopes
WVOX.
It is. It's gonna change.
Iran is
And
poking
now
around
back
down
to
there.
What Happened Here
Venezuela and
with
other
Rich
places.
Thomas, the former mayor of Mount Vernon, on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. My name is Rich Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon. You're listening to WVOX, a Whitney Global Media Station. And we're here every Wednesday from noon to 1 asking the question, what happened here with a particular situation? What happened here with this week? Our main topic was New York State election laws, the suppression that takes place, and how difficult it is for people to recognize that there are um, Byzantine archaic laws in place to protect the power structure and not the people. And that's something that we will unpack a little bit more before we end the show. But if you want to call in and ask questions about that or other topics, the phone was 914-636-0110. And one of the other topics that we were talking about were the migrant crisis and how it has hit New York City and how the migrant crisis is now coming to Westchester County and other parts of the Hudson Valley. And that dynamic where the Texas border has kind of emerged in New York's backyard, that issue of having to now assist and help more people than our systems currently can help. I believe that issue is going to change the political calculus of New York, and it's going to cause New Yorkers to rethink the decisions that are being made about their resources by the people that are currently in charge. So I think that what's happening where Mayor Adams was removed from President Biden's advisory committee for his reelection, I think that's a signal that there's the president is not happy with Mayor Adams's response to the new responsibility of housing migrants in New York City. And it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of the state responds because right now, I know in New York City, if I were told that there were going to be people sleeping in the gym of my child's school, I too would freak out because that's not fair to the students. That's not fair to their quality education. It's not fair to their quality of life and that's something that again I don't think that a school gym had to be taken away from students, but for some reason New York City made that decision to do that, and they're also making the decision to make it clear to other people in New York that they want help in addressing this issue, and we've seen varied responses. So I just know that. Charlie, do you have any thoughts on how this is going to play out? Because I know that the issue is definitely not going away.
Sure. One of the, well, first, a little history. It wasn't until the end of the 19th, early 20th century that immigration was seen as a federal obligation. It was no one's obligation. There were no rules really. And so cities set their own requirements, and San Francisco had some very racist requirements relating to Chinese and Japanese, which almost resulted in the United States going to war against Japan in the early part of the 20th century. So the federal government decided enough of this nonsense. We need to centralize this. We take over immigration. We set the policies. We set the laws. And they, of course, started with incredibly restricted laws. They opened it up in 65. And then at some various points, the federal government, for entirely political reasons, has dropped the ball. They've done nothing. The problems that the United States has faced with illegal immigration is a federal problem because the federal government made it their problem. By withdrawing from the field or not coming up with a new comprehensive immigration plan, it's now defaulted back not just to the states, but apparently to the cities. And the cities themselves are not equipped financially to deal with a sudden influx. This has to be dealt at this point at the state level. So it's up to Governor Hochul and the good people in Albany to come up with a plan to figure out what to do with these immigrants who are being sent up from the border states. The border states have their own problems, as we know, with immigration, but ultimately it's a federal responsibility, and the complaints need to be addressed to Washington. President Biden doesn't seem to have a plan. The Republicans don't seem to have a plan, or I should say, a reasonable plan. If the plan is there are 15 million illegal immigrants and they should all be frog marched across the border, then you know you're not dealing with someone who's a serious politician. You can't have all of them stay because if you do, then you may as well get rid of the requirements for legal immigration because then it becomes a fool's game. You follow the rules, you're worse off than if you don't follow the rules and you sneak in. So there's going to be some version of amnesty. And why not? Because if you look at it, who's gotten several amnesties in the past couple of decades? It's not the immigrants. It's people who have, and corporations who have offshored their money to avoid taxes. And every decade or so, the federal government says, okay, we'll give you a tax break, and we won't prosecute or audit if you just bring everything back. If it's good enough for the banks and the corporations, I don't see why some equivalent can't be good enough for the immigrants who came across illegally, because the vast, vast majority of them are hardworking individuals whose status allows for them to be taken advantage of by unscrupulous employers. It's not really a function of they're depressing the wages of union workers or white collar workers. It's not the neurosurgeon who's sneaking over the border. It's not, the high powered lawyer from Central America who's sneaking over the border. Uh, they're not taking anyone's jobs. At least that's not what the statistics appear to show. That's a fear. It's a fear of the other. It's also a distraction because if you can blame it on immigrants, then you don't have to make the hard decisions of structurally what's the problem. So at the end of the day, immigration has to be solved by the federal government. And while we're all cooling our heels, the states have to get involved. It's unfair to leave it to the cities because then you get the problem that we see now where Rockland County and some Westchester, I think also, they go to court and they say, no, we're declaring an emergency to keep people out. That's insane.
And that's where it becomes, I think you're going to see more people questioning their uh, politicians, because now you have a scenario where, you never expected to have this identity crisis, right? And now you have the dynamic where this Texas issue coming to New York, and all of a sudden New York looks and feels and starting to sound like Texas, and that's from a Democratic leadership in New York City sounding like Republicans in Texas. So I just come back to the fact that this is where, when you have issues that need to be addressed and you turn to your leaders to address them, you want leaders that have the best mindset and the best approach to resolve issues. And if you don't have a choice to pick your leader, then you're going to wind up with a mediocre mindset that's only going to create more problems than solutions. And so, for tying this all together, you have a dynamic where the federal government has the ability to address this issue, but they just won't. So maybe there will be some white smoke coming out of the debt standoff meetings that's happening right now in Washington. Maybe there could be some kind of arrangement made where both sides will not be entirely happy, but happy enough to, assist the immigration issue reach a much better format, or at least have a plan so that it doesn't punish cities and communities that don't have the ability to address this issue. And hopefully we can get some progress. But I don't see it happening yet. I'm hoping for some positive developments coming out of Washington. Winding down the final seconds of the show, just Charlie, any final thoughts before we go?
Yeah, it's my usual final thought. It's that the people are the ultimate arbiters of where our democracy is going. So it's incumbent on each and every individual to sit down in groups, decide what they would like to have happen, come up with a plan of action to make sure it's reasonable and doable, and then tell your representative of this idea, not an individual, a group. It could be a neighborhood, it could be a district wide thing. It doesn't really matter how you do it, but you get your ideas because bottom up is generally a more reasonable way to approach a problem because the bottom, so to speak, has the experience and the understanding that the top might not because they deal in theory. People who are experiencing day to day things, tribulations, they have the practice. So it's for them to educate their elected officials or replace them with people who want to be educated.
And that's our show for today. Thank you all for joining. But guess what? We'll be back next week with more What Happened Here so that the people can unpack and know what to do next. Thank you. Have a great week.